Hello and welcome to Conversations with Tona Brown. I'm here with Nathan James, who is a very important figure in the LGBTQ community. He's mostly known as a journalist, writing for GBM News, writing for CBS and other major publications on behalf of the LGBTQ community. Thank you so much, Nathan, for joining me. Welcome to Conversations with Tona Brown. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing okay. I'm taking things one day at a time. It's a pleasure to be here speaking with you.
We have been having a lot of conversations off camera just about the state that we're in politically here in America for LGBTQ people. We have this election coming with Donald Trump, and there's so many of us that are fearful for the future. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you think is going on and what we need to be doing in our community?
The top bold-faced item I want to say right at the beginning is I want to encourage everyone, I mean everyone, LGBTQ people, allies, friends, family, to vote this November because this will be the most consequential election in all of American history. And even more so for us in the LGBTQ community. If you look around the country at the different states, especially the red states that are passing and signing legislation into law that targets people in our community, you can see the trend is towards rolling the clock back to the kind of things, the kinds of obstacles that we faced and overcame many years ago. We don't want to return to the past. We want to go forward into the future. So the most effective way to make sure that we continue to move forward is to vote and to encourage everyone else to vote. Make sure you're registered, make sure you vote, and make your voice heard.
Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in the 70s and 80s, because I think that we're forgetting that all of this stuff can be rolled back. And it's only been within the last 20, 30 years that we've seen the progression where true equality for all people was starting to happen in its own way. Give me an example of what it was like on a day-to-day basis in the 70s and 80s.
Back in those days, as I'm sure you're aware, particularly in the 70s, being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or trans, in those days, first of all, it was considered a mental illness, and homosexuality was outlawed in every state. So the consequences for coming out or being outed in American society were both immediate and severe. I knew that I was gay by the time I was 12 years old, and I also knew that I'd better keep that to myself. That was in the mid 1970s, and I knew that it was a bad idea to share this even with my parents or people that were close to me. Bad things would follow if I were to do that.
Give an example.
Well, if you were a teenager in the 1970s and you came out to your parents, especially in a place like New York State, could have you declared a person in need of supervision or PINS. That means you could be institutionalized, you could be forced to undergo conversion therapy, whatever have you. If you were an adult, it meant you could lose your job, you could lose your home, your apartment. It would be very, very hard for you to reintegrate into society after something like that. If you got arrested for homosexuality, that was a sex offense. It was the same as the way we look at pedophiles today. LGBTQ people were looked down upon for that and so many other reasons. And it was considered the norm, the default to act against LGBTQ people. If you look back in the 70s, for example, Anita Bryant, who was a gospel singer, launched a nationwide campaign to condemn us and to get local laws passed against us. And she was indicative of a larger social force which was prevalent in that time. You could get arrested just for walking down the street holding your boyfriend's hand.
What about yourself, a personal experience that you experienced during this time?
Yes, way back in the 80s, without going into great detail, I was being intimate with my boyfriend, and the police came in looking for my roommate who had a warrant, and they said, sorry guys, we have to enforce this. So we went through the system. And this was That was relatively minor considering what happened to a great many gay men in the 1980s. Keep in mind, this wasn't just where society could act against you, this was at the onset of the AIDS Holocaust.
This was in your home. Police came into your personal home and arrested you and your boyfriend. One of the girls who calls me her daughter, my gay mother, she told me horrible stories of people literally being stripped butt naked on the street by the police for everyone to see. And so many horrible stories back then that it took a lot of money and people getting together on a grassroots level to change this legislation. And I think that people have taken that for granted. I feel that we forget that it was a protest to go to Pride and be a part of the march. And I think we've forgotten that. We've gotten so comfortable with laying in the bed with these corporations and feeling like, oh, everything is so different. You and I both know it because we just tried to do another phenomenal event, the 10-year anniversary of my Carnegie Hall debut, and we couldn't get any money. We got absolutely no corporate sponsorship for a historical event. And I need people to understand that because there are people that assume when they see us do these phenomenal things that we're just being financed. Can you tell us a little bit about the research that you've been doing on that?
Absolutely. But first, I want to preface that by letting the younger generation know if they're not already aware. It's only been about 20 years since homosexuality was decriminalized by the Supreme Court. It was a decision in a case called Lawrence v. Texas, which ruled that laws that targeted one specific group of Americans were unconstitutional. So it's only been since 2003. It hasn't been that long. In that time, in the intervening time between then and now, we've made great strides forward. We have same sex marriage, don't ask, don't tell has ended. There have been great strides forward in people who seek to transition getting gender affirming care, access to gender affirming supportive therapy. And corporate America came on board in the intervening 20 years with very visible, very widespread support for us, especially in events like you mentioned, like the New York City Pride March, which is called a march to this day to remind us of its political heritage. Now, what happened in the past year is very telling about the changes that are taking place in American society. We tried, as you mentioned, to organize a 10th anniversary commemorative concert of your historical performance at Carnegie Hall. And not only did we run into difficulty in obtaining any corporate support at all, which was very surprising to me because the events I participated in the past have encountered no resistance. But New York City Pride had to cancel the Pride Island event and the rally, which bookend Pride Week in New York, and which have been traditionally signature events for New York City Pride for the same reason, lack of corporate support. They are only doing the march. Target, which last year had very prominent displays of Pride merchandise, was attacked by right-wing conservatives inside the stores where employees were harassed and the displays were destroyed. This year they have caved into the pressure from the other side, and now they have decided to limit or eliminate displays of Pride merchandise in their stores as a result. Another thing, another type of corporate backlash that changed the thinking of corporate America on supporting LGBTQ events was the Bud Light campaign featuring Dylan Mulvaney, who was a trans online influencer. She created a contest for Bud Light customers, and Bud Light in turn featured her image on one can of Bud Light as a promotion. The right wing went crazy. There was a huge backlash.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrities made videos shooting at Bud Light cans, and Anheuser-Busch lost a lot of money on lost sales as a result of this campaign. And even further, Sports Illustrated featured two trans models on their swimsuit issue cover in succession. Sports Illustrated isn't there anymore. They stopped publishing earlier this year. And a lot of people ascribe that to the loss of subscriptions that took place as a result of this decision.
So, going forward for us, what are we supposed to do? If we are finding that many of these corporations have a fickle relationship with our community, and because what you mentioned earlier, which I think people need to remember, we're talking about corporations, for profit organizations. So everything is about their what? Bottom line, people. Okay. So if the bottom line is getting affected, no matter how much they claim that they care about DEI or affirmative action or LGBTQ people, anything, any marginalized group, when the bottom line is affected, guess what? We're seeing around the country that they are running to the hills and no longer sponsoring our events. So, what can we do about it?
One thing we can do right away is remind corporate America of the value of the LGBTQ dollar. We're customers of these companies as well, and we have a lot of purchasing power on our own. So that's one thing we can do. Another thing we can do is we can lend community support to our own events so that whether or not corporate America is there for us, we can support them ourselves as much as possible so that instead of an event getting canceled, it may be not as large as the previous year, but it will still happen. So I think grassroots support is another thing. And a third thing is know your elected officials that are friendly to our community who support us and make us more visible and enlist their support in encouraging their corporate constituencies to get back on the bandwagon and recognize that we are an important part of American society as well.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. So, while I do have you here, let's talk a little bit more about how to get something done in these tumultuous times, because I want people to remember that our Carnegie Hall event was 10 years ago. Nothing like that had ever been done. So, talk a little bit about what that was like to find out that we had this amazing idea and this event. And now we realize no one else has done it in New York City.
Yeah, back in those days when we had the original conversation, and I said, Tony, you really should be on the stage at Carnegie Hall. How do we go about that? And I'll be honest. Originally, I thought it was a shot in the dark. I said, let's see what they have to say. I thought this was really going to be a shot in the dark, but surprise, surprise, they went for it. And, we started making plans to put this together. And I thought the whole idea was not just to have an LGBT themed concert at Carnegie Hall, but have you specifically there as an historical event, something where it's a first. And not only is it a first, it's a highly visible first in one of the most renowned recital halls in the world. I thought that would be a statement that everybody should see and be proud of. So that was my thinking originally. And then we went ahead and started making our preparations. I remember that we got GLAD involved and we enlisted their help, okay, which was in addition to what you contributed financially to creating the event in the first place. GLAD came on board and they supplemented that. And I remember that there was an Indiegogo or a GoFundMe. I don't exactly remember what the platform was, but
GoFundMe.
There was a huge outpouring of community support, which even for 10 years ago that was very uplifting to me.
It was.
And then we came to New York the week of the show and we did our various media interviews. We spoke with Cheryl Wills of New York One News. We went to Sirius XM Radio. I believe we spoke to Huffington Post, if I'm not mistaken. We did a whole bunch of local national platforms. In fact, the media platforms around the world picked us up.
That's right. And Ariana Huffington gave us her personal approval because we weren't supposed to be featured. We just happened to meet her at the GLAAD Media Awards. She told her people, hey, this story is important. And speaking of people who were integral in helping us, I just want us to both give shout outs to all of those like New York City Black Pride, Lee Soldier. I don't know what we would have done without his help. Dwight Eubanks, who personally called me and said, Tona, This is very, very important. Anything that I can do to help, I will. Unfortunately, he was not able to come to the event. He was actually going to do my hair. Now, here's the other thing that's interesting, y'all. No one's going to believe this now because of how much money other entities have made doing similar things. But we didn't know what we were going to wear. So people like Robert E. Knight came into my life. Adrian Alizea came into my life and said, hey, we will donate these garments. And we did this, was it a 6-month period? Because you can only book Carnegie Hall within a certain time frame. Can you talk about that?
We did this in about 8 months. We did this from October to June. And October was when we first had the conversation. And you're right, we need to acknowledge all the people that made this a reality. You know, it was the four of us, it was you, me, Tammy Pierre, and Charlie Gilmer. And we really made
That's
this
right.
happen. I also want to acknowledge my very, very good friend Jason Duvall Hunter.
I was about to bring him up.
I want to acknowledge further promotion by DJ Baker on the Do Dirty Show. I want to, of course, mention Lee Soldier at New York City Black Pride, Adrian Alicia. And we had quite a cast of characters that came out to see us that were really a who's who of LGBTQ America. I remember very many prominent figures: Nathan Hill Williams, Kevin Edward Taylor. I remember Marco Hall was there. I remember literally the top of the list in the trans community in particular. All of them came out to see us.
They really did. I mean, I remember getting a picture with Janet Mock at the after party. So many activists in the trans community in New York were there. We couldn't do it on a weekend. And I even remember with you, we have a picture with Wanda Sykes, and she wanted to be there, but of course she thought it was going to be on the weekend. Monifa, who's been on my show as well. Monifa really wanted to be there. It was so many people who wanted to be there, but we had to get the cheapest night. But we all believed in the project. And I'm glad you mentioned Jason Duvall Hunter, because Jason was up many nights with us as we're trying to plan. Javon Martin, who owns Princess Janae's place, Javon Martin allowed me to stay there because the person that I was talking to at that time that promised me to stay there literally had put my stuff out on the street, y'all. So it was a lot to get this show done. We had an amazing team of LGBTQ people that were of the Black and Latino community. We tried to grab people that we could from all parts of our community, and that's another thing I'm very proud of. I'm also proud of the repertoire that I chose, being African American art songs and Negro spirituals, simply because I had learned of these rare and unique pieces by studying at HBCUs, and normally they weren't programmed. Tai Chung was someone who was also trying to help us.
We had the support of the Trevor Project. We were with Wanda Sykes that night.
I forgot. That's right. I mean, remember they asked me to perform for their huge event at the Grand Marquis. We were on red carpets. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was draining and taxing because we just knew that we were doing it on such a shoestring budget just to get it going. And then, of course, we're taking a community event into one of the most expensive venues on the East Coast. So we knew it was going to be a challenge, but I'm so proud of all of us because we just said no matter what, whether it's going to make money or not, which it didn't make a lot of money, and that's fine. That wasn't the point of it. And I think that's why so many people constantly are reminding us of how important that show was for them. They were just like, this is possible. We can do this. I had so many people write me after that show who were all over the world and would write me and say, oh my goodness, I'm in Portugal or I'm in South America. Some of my friends who were touring with Willie Nelson were like, this is the buzz. People are talking about who is this that's putting on this show and this group of people and what they're doing. And so I would like to see this happen again. I definitely want to start doing things here. I live in DC area, so I definitely want to start putting on these sort of shows to show just how dynamic our community is.
I think that's a fantastic idea, and so we shall. You mentioned that it struck a chord with so many people and it generated such an emotional response. I think it's both a combination of your unique and magnificent talents and the historical significance of what we were doing.
Thank you. It was an amazing night to remember. I just remember just being blown away, and then all the opposition that we never thought we would have within our community, where people were just like, "Are we sure we want to fund this?" And I remember getting letters from some people who were saying, "Well, if we give you money towards this, are you and your team going to be driving around in a limo?" And just silly things that we just had to take a deep breath and just ignore. I think that we've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work to do. So, if you were going to advise someone who is young, they're LGBTQ, and they want to get more involved, not just politically, but even in the arts, or if they want to be a writer like yourself, how would you advise them with this tumultuous time we're in?
How would I advise them to move forward? First of all, the younger generation, it goes without saying, represents our future. So I think visibility is still the key. One thing I've noticed over the years is that for a long, long time, the percentage of people in the American population that identified as LGBTQ in anonymous surveys generally hovered between 6 and 8%. In recent years, however, the number of people representing themselves as LGBTQ have increased. So now the number is close to 9 or 10% of our population. And I think the reason for that change is that as we've made progress, especially for the younger generation, they are less afraid to freely identify themselves authentically because they're not as afraid of the kind of consequences we had to face many years ago. That speaks to visibility. And the way to become more visible is to be free and comfortable living as your true, authentic self all the time. You should be able to go out your front door as yourself all the time. You shouldn't have to change your appearance or quote unquote tone down your appearance or your expression to satisfy social demands or for your own safety. So that's one way to make ourselves more visible, to know that there are more of us out there. We have to be seen. Another way to do that is, again, support the leadership that supports us. Support our elected officials when they visibly support us, and by extension, run for something. Run for office yourself. Get involved. The more elected officials we have in our community, the better off we are. I serve as the judge of election in Philadelphia as a Democrat. And one of the reasons I do so proudly is because in the United States, LGBTQ people make up 0.02% of all elected officials in the country. We need way more than that if we're going to stop the kind of legislation that is being passed against us all the time. So that's another thing. The more of us that there are in positions where they can make a change in public office, the better off we'll be there too.
Absolutely. Thank you for these like literal calls of action, because I think so many of us are so frustrated that we just don't know what to do. But blaming this person and doing this and that, that's not helping us move forward. I know for myself as an educator, when I go to these schools and I'm doing work as a teacher, I am elated by what I see. But I know that the other side is not, because everyone is treated equally, even down to the restrooms. You and I have talked in the past about some of the things I went through, going into the male restroom and people just going crazy when I was early in my transition, being sexually assaulted in said restrooms, which I talk about in my memoir, just all kinds of things. So it's amazing to go and see that these young people don't have to, if we do what we're supposed to do, as you're saying, they don't have to go through that. They don't have to go through the trauma that so many of us went through. I mean, a lot of my friends have PTSD and other diagnoses, and you know it because they've gone through so much stuff just to find who they are and just to protect who they are and to protect your own mental state of being when you have a whole society that's telling you that something is wrong with you and all these type of things. I also think it's so funny that the main things that they say that we're out here doing, you keep catching their politicians and various officials doing. So I think one of the reasons why they're so preoccupied with it is because it's going in their heads all the time. We're not thinking of those things. We just want to live our life. We're not trying to tell you how to live. So we don't want you telling us how to live. And that's the difference. We're not trying to make legislation and stuff to say you can't be a Christian conservative, dot, 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 dot. So why are you coming for us when we're just trying to say, hey, there are different people in this world. We make the world go around, and we belong here and deserve to be here just as much as you do.
I agree. And I think one of the big problems we're facing, especially with a candidate like Donald Trump, is that because he is a very powerful figure, because he's been president of the United States, and because he gives his core constituency permission to hate, he validates their bigotry, he amplifies it, and he makes the people that go to his rallies, that vote for him, that fly his flags, he makes it somewhat acceptable in their eyes, in their minds, to vilify us. And these are the people who elect the politicians who put bills into committee that take things away from us all the time. It's things like that that we have to be vigilant about. Again, I've said this several times. I apologize, but it's the truth.
Never apologize for the truth.
This is what we always have to pay attention to, and what we're up against here in the United States in the next 5 months, in the next 4 months, it's going to have an absolutely determinative effect on our future and our fate and what happens to us individually and as a community, because another Trump administration is not something that we are likely to get through well.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say we should never apologize for telling the truth. We need more truth tellers in this world because everyone is so scared to say the truth. So I definitely don't apologize for that. Keep speaking the truth. Keep letting people know about the issues that we have and what we need to fix it. Do you have anything else you want to leave for our audience?
Just live in your authentic self every day. Encourage those around you to live their authentic selves and live in love and peace. And again, VOTE, 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 vote. There is nothing more important in November.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on Conversations with Tona Brown. And thank you for your time. I know you're a very busy person. You have a lot going on. So I want to thank you so much. And this concludes an episode of Conversations with Tona Brown with Nathan James, my buddy, as we talked about history from an LGBTQ perspective, as we talked about our amazing historical event, which was a performance at Carnegie Hall, headlining myself as a transgender person of color. I can't thank you enough for believing in me enough and trusting me enough to put on an event like that with your help. I just want to thank you. And I just want you to know that it's historical. It's never going anywhere. We will always know those warriors in our community who went above and beyond to make a difference. And you made a difference and you continue to make a difference. How can people get in contact with you if they want to follow your work, if they want to get some of your books? Tell us where they can find those things.
You can find me on Instagram at Nathan James 64, on Facebook at Nathan James FB. My works are on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever fine books are sold. It's all LGBTQ fiction. And you can find me on Twitter, now known as X, at Real Nathan James.
Okay, so y'all heard it here. Y'all know where you can find Nathan. Please support him and his work. Let's not just support with lip service, let's support with some money. Please come and help independent artists that are out here telling the truth and doing the real work. And we got to get away from just supporting people that we see on television. There are so many activists. There are so many hardworking people in our community that never get to the point that they're actually on television, but they're doing the real work. We have people that are out here struggling. They're on the streets. They need help and assistance. My job is to let you all know where you can go to support those type of people and those type of organizations. Nathan James has been involved in our community for decades and deserves all the bona fides that come behind your name. Thank you, my friend, for coming on Conversations with Tona Brown. If you would like to support this podcast, please rate us on wherever you're hearing this, and also follow me on tonabrown.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Tenacity. You can follow me on all of the social media, including Facebook. If you would like to learn more about my personal journey, you can find my memoir, Tenacity, The Tona Brown Story, at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And until the next episode, everyone, have a blessed and prosperous week.